work raising awareness and put together publications. And we try to get the word out there, not just to the public using the media, talking to you guys, but also the big picture of the government. Francis' story and the trafficking of selling of refugees at the border really kind of peaked in, I think, 2008, and then it exploded because with the US government coming up with a report on the state of refugees, and TV7 doing an expose on it, having to put out a publication called Involving Joe, which documented the stories, and it put a lot of pressure on the government, and especially because it highlighted that the state was working, together with traffickers, and it was of international chain. And so I think for the most part, this selling of refugees at the border has stopped. At least I'm not heard of any concrete. Francis mentioned this, the people who can't pay money to buy their freedom back, some are sold to traffickers to work. I personally interviewed a man who was a refugee who could not pay the sum to come back, and he was eventually sold to work on a fishing boat. And for 3 years, he was in the middle of the ocean, never once coming back to shore, because essentially he was a slave to the captain. And it is possible that the boats never come back to shore, and the slaves on board remain there. So in the middle of the ocean, then the British ships come and pick up the catch and go, leaving the essentially slaves behind. And he was there. He came here to Malaysia to seek asylum because he was fleeing horrors in his own country. And because of the system in the country that does not recognize the rights of refugees, where there's corruption that is so rampant within the government, that leads people to situations where they're sold into traffickers. He spent 3 years of his life in the middle of the ocean until one day when that boat broke down and he was forced to come to shore, that he managed to jump ship and escape. And if you can read the Global Catch, it's another publication of ours, and I don't mean to plug this as Tanaga work, but I think people really should know these stories, because these are the realities around us. And if it's possible, I'd just like to share a little bit more about the situation of detention. Francis mentioned a bit about detention centers in Malaysia. Make no mistake, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific, and I think speaking to friends who work in international organizations that visit detention centers around the world, Malaysia truly has one of the worst in the world when it comes to detention. It doesn't meet the basic human rights, basic standards of dignity. You have people who are stripped naked and made to do squats. You have people who are in detention centers, the kind of food that you eat. Handfuls of rice and a bit of fish and water that's supposed to constitute soup. Children are in detention. You have sexual harassment in detention. The conditions that the detainees have to sleep in. One refugee describes as wooden planks on the floor, and the cracks in the planks infested with bugs and mites and rubbish. There's not enough toilets, it's overcrowded. It's situations where people have committed really no criminal acts. They are detained because they don't have proper documents. It's an administrative matter. And yet we put them in these detention centers where they go through hell. It's not just refugees who have no business being arrested for migrant workers. I think a year ago we had the home ministry say that something like 80% of migrants in detention came here legally. So they came here with their documents, but somewhere along the way, because of the systems where their passports are held by their employers, and this is not a fault of their own, they end up being in a detention center. Malaysia also whips people under the Immigration Act. If you are found to have entered the country illegally, then you can be whipped. And whipping, the way it's done in Malaysia, constitutes torture. From 2005 to 2010, we whipped about 30,000 migrants. And if you put that into context, essentially from 2005 to 2010, we let 30,000 migrants be tortured in our country under our name. Malaysia has about 300,000 domestic workers, primarily from Indonesia, Cambodia, Philippines, some from Sri Lanka. How many of us here today have domestic workers at home? So this is when we want to talk about migrants and refugees. I think sometimes it's easy to think of them as a group that exists but not necessarily having anything to do with us. But the fact of the matter is most Malaysians on a daily basis come into interaction with the migrant population. And some of us come into interaction in, as I said, a very intimate way, that the person lives and works with us, lives with us and works for us. Domestic workers do not enjoy good protection in Malaysia. In fact, the laws are really not sufficient at all to protect domestic workers, and many end up in a form of slavery because they are bonded to the employer. They come in and we as employers pay lots of money to agents to recruit domestic workers, but then have wages of the domestic workers deducted. So many work for 3 to 6 months without any money. Many domestic workers don't have access to their passports. Their bosses, their employers hold on to their passports. And this is an important point because it keeps them tied to the employer. Many domestic workers, the majority in Malaysia, work 7 days a week. They do not have even 1 day off. And this, I think, is a reality that many of us are familiar with. If we want to have an honest discussion, then we should have an honest discussion about people that we know in our lives who don't grant a day off to domestic workers. It has become so normalized for us to have foreign women living and working within our homes. We take it for granted that because our realities are tough, and they are tough, and so both parents have to work. Who's going to manage the home? Who's going to help take care of the children? So let's employ a maid. The acceptance of this as cheap labor to help deal with troubles in our home has really led to a situation where we've got thousands and thousands of domestic workers in states of slavery. Malaysia has handled hundreds of cases, and it's getting worse. You've got domestic workers who come with a whole range of abuses, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse. Increasingly, we're seeing malnutrition, starvation. People die in our homes because, one, the state doesn't protect, there are no good laws in place, but also we as society have accepted this as a way of being. We've spoken to thousands of people in churches, in communities, and saying to them, look, even though the Malaysian government doesn't have protections for domestic workers under the Employment Act calls them servants and not workers. Therefore, whether they have a day off or not doesn't matter. That's whether the government has it in place with the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. Even though the state doesn't have it, why don't we, as people who understand and respect the rights of others, how is it that we as employers do not even grant 1 day off to a domestic worker? And in churches, we have people tell us, well, I do grant her a day off. On Sundays, she can do whatever she wants. As long as she's still within the house. Or, I'm really nice to my maid. She can go shopping with me. What does that mean? She gets to hold your bags and take care of your child while you walk in a shopping center? She can go to church on Sunday. That she has a day off. But that is not standards that we accept for ourselves. Can you imagine as an accountant if your boss told you that you had to remain in the office for 7 days a week, but on Sundays you get to watch TV and hang out with your friends as long as it's still in the office? So the idea here is that the only difference between a migrant and us is immigration status. The standards of rights and dignity that we expect for ourselves migrants and refugees. And the challenge to us is to ask ourselves why we have not accepted that for everyone, accepted these standards for others. Why is it that we have 4 million migrants in a really difficult state in this country? Why is it we have over 100,000 refugees who are not protected by the law? We can blame the state, and we should, because there's no political power to change. But we should also take responsibility as people in this country that for too long have not pushed for change at the state level, and for too long have let people in our lives be bad employees who exploit the lives of migrants. I know that it sounds quite preachy and ranty, and who wants to listen to somebody come and yell at the camera about how difficult it is for migrants in Malaysia. And I'm sure many of you know people who treat migrants really well. Fantastic. But the reality, however, is that too many people are not treating migrants well. And we have a culture where we don't like to speak about it, or we close one eye. But it cannot continue, because literally, I mean, among us, I don't know, the thousands of cases of refugees exploited, sexually harassed, raped, tortured, denied their wages. Every day we deal with it. Every day my colleagues in the trafficking desk deal with it. Every day, I'm sure Francis knows people in his community, or Thomas knows people in his community. Box Abaya, it's common, right? Yeah. So it is, the issues are plenty, but the solutions have to really start from us, what we do at the individual level, and what are we doing to make sure that the government hears us.
So on behalf of Assumption Migrant Ministry, we also appeal out to all of you and PDCs, the associations, and whoever like to do the outreach to migrant schools, refugee schools, just your time. Maybe 1 hour, 2 hours a week, or 2 hours a month of your time to be with the children, to teach them, impart something, some knowledge of English or artwork or music to them. And if for those who do not feel that they have got a skill, they can also be part of us for logistics to transport free vegetables from one place, from the Pasar Borong to different centers.